According to a PBOC advisor, Bitcoin is illegitimate, but the currency that they issue is not. Government decree is the only thing that sets a fiat currency apart from a cryptocurrency in this respect. Governments and those in the financial industry have been constantly dwelling on the dangers of cryptocurrencies, all the while proving that central planners are completely incapable of price stability. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I have a whole host of issues to talk to you today about, but let's begin with Bitcoin. This article is out of Reuters. Virtual currencies like Bitcoin are assets, but Bitcoin itself doesn't have the fundamental attributes needed to be a currency that could meet modern economic development needs. And that is according to this PBOC advisor. This is what he said. I'll read you his quote. Bitcoin does not have the fundamental attributes because it is a string of code generated by complex algorithms. He then goes on to say that it's an asset. It does have some technical value, and essentially tries to say, you know, it's cool and everything, but it's not exactly our national currency. Let me just first discuss this. Central banks are in fact quasi-government or semi-private institutions. They issue the currency for that particular country, which becomes the legal tender. They decide how much currency is printed. They decide the interest rates. They essentially decide what the currency is worth at any given moment. So we know that to be a fact. We know that central banks are unable to maintain price stability. We see that in hyperinflations that take place, and we also just see it in the general inflation that takes place over time as you lose the value of your currencies. It's a fact that happens. That's why it's important to hold real assets. They make the claim that cryptocurrencies are illegitimate because it's a string of code generated by a complex algorithm, yet the only thing that legitimizes a fiat currency from a government is simply the fact that they say, we promise to pay back on our debt. So we're taking their promise for the way it is. Two pieces of paper, one could be Zimbabwe, one could be US dollar, and the only reason why one is worth more than the other is the idea in our heads that one government is more legitimate than the other. It's the people's mentality surrounding that particular asset or currency or whatever it is. That's what gives it value. It's all imagined in our head. You see gold trading on the financial exchanges sitting at, let's say, $1,200 an ounce, and you believe that gold is worth $1,200 an ounce, but it's only worth $1,200 at that given moment. Tomorrow it could be 100. The next day it could be 100 million. You don't know. But it doesn't really change the value of what you're looking at. If it's a piece of paper, it is worth a piece of paper, whatever that is to you. A piece of gold is worth a lump of metal. That's it. What I look at it as, what does this provide me? If I have a house that I live in, this house is worth to me, it's worth shelter. It provides warmth. It provides cooling. It provides the ability for me to live under these good conditions, let's say. So that to me has a lot of value. Paper currencies or money in general, it doesn't really have value to me, but what it does for me is an ability to transact. So I want to buy apples. So if I want to get apples because I'm hungry, what do? Well, I have to get money. I have to go to the store. I have to pay for those apples. I can grow it myself, but stay with me on this. I could go to the store. I could use this currency to buy something with. Those are the goods right there. So I take this currency. Where do I get it from? Well, I have to get it from the bank. And of course, we know how the banking system works and so on. All we're using money for is an ability to transact. I want a product, goods, services, and how do I get it? Well, I use currency. So there's no reason why we couldn't use any currency. I could use Zimbabwe notes if I decide to. If the store will accept them, I could do that. But essentially what has happened here is that we are fighting in between, is Bitcoin legitimate, when I don't think we want it to be considered legitimate by governments. I don't want that at all. I want the ability for you and I to transact through some sort of medium of exchange that no third party knows about. Call it Bitcoin, call it altcoin, call it GPS coin. It doesn't matter. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how we're going to do all of this. I'm not designing any of this. All I'm saying is that I don't have any faith in any government at all. And I hope that they don't stick their nose into all of these cryptocurrencies. That will make things worse. Okay, that's enough ranting for this. Let me move on into the next article as we talk about debt. Total debt to GDP, this is in China. It has expanded. Does that surprise you at all? Look at this over the years. Complete expansion, and one of them being non-fin corporates. I'll just quickly mention, if you can't read it, household, government, and financial sector. These are all expanding, and it goes with any country, in fact. But the one that I wanted to highlight is something that I've talked about before, and that is the non-fin corporates. Corporations are expanding their debt, and they need to do this because times are tough. They have to take on more debt. But the system as a whole is taking on more debt. We have seen that. We've seen cities and states and provinces and regions and everywhere else take on more debt. Why? Why aren't they paying off the debt? Because they can get it more cheaply now than ever before. And quite frankly, this is the name of the game, is to get into more debt. You can't pay off debt because you'll collapse the system. Totally switching gears here for a moment. This is something that I see all the time. I've covered it a couple times, but I see it all the time. So it's something that I don't bring up to you, but I'm sure you've seen it for yourself. Military plane over Rock Hill rattles neighborhoods. This is something that takes place without the warning or consent of the people. You have these military drills. People get freaked out. They're screaming. They're calling 911. They are getting on social media wondering what the hell is going on. And then after the fact, the government comes out and says, yes, we were running some tests. Why wouldn't you just let people know beforehand? Why not? Because you want to see how they react if there's tanks on the streets and people in these militarized police getup walking down your streets and scaring the hell out of you. You want to see how the people react, and then you can gauge your soldiers and see, what happened, how did they react, what was their solution, what was the, what happened, essentially. This happens all the time. All right, very quickly here. Rather than sell his soybeans for pesos that are worth less every day because of the rampant inflation, this man from Argentina figured he'd get a better deal by trading the crop for something he can actually use. More fuel to run his tractor. So this is what's happening. A barter system is opening up in Argentina where there is heavy inflation. Now think about that for a second. Going back to barter. Why? Because the government failed. The government failed at being able to maintain their price stability. That's what I talked about in the introduction. Isn't this really interesting? Why the hell do we even need a currency, for the most part, if they can't figure out a way to keep it stable? So one farmer says, well, you know what? Why don't I give you some of this that I have a lot of, that may be an asset to you, and then you have that fuel. Well, we can do a nice little exchange. You have a lot of that, I have a lot of this. We'll just do an exchange. No money involved. We don't need to get any third party involved. It's just you and I think that is so beautiful. It doesn't matter what we do that with. I just think it's incredible. I could have a service. I have a financial service where I do let's say, what I used to do anyway, where I would do consultations, right? Well, that consultation, I would accept money, currency, US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever. Instead, I could say, you can give me apples, all right? So I will do this for you. You can give me apples. I like apples. I want to eat apples. You have an apple farm. I'll come to your farm. I'll pick the apples, and then we can do this exchange. I think that is so genius. Why do we need to go through that middleman? Well, of course we do so because it makes our lives somewhat easier in a way. But these middlemen exist in between every little different thing that we have. All of the products that we have, all the goods and the services and everything else. There's all these middlemen which seem to be making their little profits here and there. You know, you have Interact machines, and the company that you use them at has to pay a service fee every single month for that. And then, you know, that building you go into has to have lights on, and the lights are power, and the power company, the taxes they pay, and so on and so forth. And you see where I'm going here. I just love the system in general. Just think about that we don't need a third party. We really don't. Sears to close 43 more stores to cut costs. The retail market is dying, and this is something that has been going on for a little while, and this is part of the reason, and that is square feet of retail per capita, particularly in the US. Okay, you are seeing an absolute ridiculous amount of retail. And what are they doing? Well, they're renting out these malls, these retail spaces to, I believe there was, you know, like libraries and schools and all sorts of things that you would not normally see in a mall, but simply they have a lot of retail space. Come on in, we need somebody in here. So they're getting rent for their retail space. That's something that's happening. You also have the rise of corporations like Amazon and online retailers, which continue to do better year after year after year. You see particular companies, let's say just Walmart, for example, where their online sales pick up year after year after year. So while that company might be still bringing in the sales, they're doing more so online versus the brick and mortar. So there's a lot of things going on here, but I think generally the economy is doing worse. This here is just trying to show you a chart of the Case-Shiller US Home Price Index, and going year after year. Now things have changed since, but essentially what this article I was reading just has this in mind, that at this time, in particular in Canada, where we are at right now is at the very top of this peak. And they claim that it will head downwards. I don't think it will head downwards if interest rates remain low. And they seem to be wanting to increase this. Should interest rates hit to a higher level, I do believe that the prices will head south, and it will happen very quickly because of the amount of leverage. People love leverage, and people will fight for leverage and everything that it stands for. I, on the other hand, simply feel that there is too much leverage in the system, and just a little increase in the borrowing costs will hurt people very badly. They will go bankrupt. All right, so we're looking at this. Imagine this. The tax employees to carry guns. The county is actually saying that they'll save $350,000 per year. All the while saying that people shouldn't have the ability to carry guns. That's the way I see it to be ridiculous in a way. The taxman, now the taxman runs such a dangerous job. They are in part essentially a, whatever you want to call it, a robber. You know, they're just doing their job. I get it, but they are extorting the public of their money. That's what taxes really are, and in particular, income tax. I see that to be actual robbery, and I'm not trying to be silly about that. I do see it as theft, because you've earned that income. The government didn't earn that income. Now we have consumption-based taxes. So you go to the store and you buy an iPad, you pay tax on that iPad. That's a consumption-based tax. You decided to buy the iPad. Whereas the income, you need to work because you have to buy things. You need to buy food, you need to buy shelter and all this and that. So you are essentially, it's different. There's much difference between the consumption-based taxes and the income-based taxes. I see it as fraud, and that's why they have to bring guns to collect the taxes, because people don't want to give it up, and I don't blame them. Now, a lot of people have decided not to pay their taxes. I think this could be a very bad idea. I think there are a lot of better loopholes around the system that you should be interested in. I won't get into that, but there are ways to deal with that. Silver flash crashed, and I thought it was interesting. I wanted to bring it to you. This here, when you see this line heading straight down, in any stock, in any futures market or anything like this, this is not, to me, it's not legitimate. Nothing really depreciates at such a large level. Now, the funny thing about this was, it was after hours. This occurred after hours in an illiquid time period. Why would an individual want to sell off, if it was just a person, why would they want to sell off anything, a large amount? This was a significant amount of silver all at once, sell it off in an illiquid time period. It's possible, there's no doubt, but it seems to be that it's nonsensical. So I believe this was either a computer program acting in this way, and that's generally what the flash crashes are, or this was all part of the nefarious plan to try and push the silver and gold downward. We know that they are doing that. I don't know to what degree exactly, because all the information is sort of clouded and shrouded in mystery, but let's just say for a fact that there was some disruption in the silver market today. Very quickly here, Facebook. Facebook intends to develop 1.75 million square feet of offices, and it goes on. They're developing this massive area where there will be housing, where there will be a very big park, or whatever you want to call it, their campus, as they say. And this is a massive endeavor. What I find interesting about it is that it's almost similar to what you see in developing nations. If you've ever been to some of these resorts in the developing nations, in the Caribbean or anywhere else, Mexico or whatever, you see a lot of times where they have this huge resort where thousands of people will be at, thousands of these tourists will be at, and you have the living quarters located within the property grounds. And that's the kind of vibe that it gives me. I mean, you had the same type of deal going on at Foxconn in China, other factories in China, in fact, where they live in the same area. If it's, it's your decision to work in this place, to live in this place, you don't, or it's not slave labor necessarily, but I just see it as you work so much to attain this fiat currency garbage paper that we are doing this for paper, and they're working themselves to death. People work themselves to death. And then think about it. They want to live really close to work because that allows them to get to and from, they're not spending much time at home because they're working very long hours because they need to make their paper. And to me, it just says it all. It's quite sad, in fact. The shortage of housing in California's Silicon Valley has gotten so severe that Facebook on Friday proposed taking home building into its own hands for the first time to plans to construct 1,500 units near its headquarters. It goes on, but essentially what we have is a frightening scenario where much wealth is leaving the hands of the middle class. It's making its way into the corporate hands who have control over the governments, and unbelievably, it's happening at such a rapid clip. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I went in all different directions today. I ranted quite a bit, but I hope that I got through my points If you appreciate that, then obviously please continue to support me. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my books, The Money GPS and my new release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can flip through these books at Amazon. The links are in the description. The first book is about the 4 asset classes and how to profit from them, whereas the new book takes on these familiar concepts, but then I get into things like tax incentives, reducing your monthly expenses, and getting away from the financial system. I teach you how to do that in Global Economic Collapse. I call it the Money GPS strategy. So take a look at it at Amazon. You can flip through the pages there. If you want the audiobook version instead of Global Economic Collapse, that's available at themoneygps.com. Check out the links below in the description for all the things that I offer. Thank you for your support. As always, take care.